Coming up on today's episode, 5 things that I really don't miss on the Atto 3 and what they're like on the Volvo instead. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for today's episode number 131, when we're going to have a look at 5 things that I really don't miss on the Atto 3. So as you know, I upgraded my car and I bought a Volvo XC40. The wife still owns the green machine, so thanks to Iris for letting me do some filming and testing with the Atto 3. Now just remember, there's no such thing as a terrible car or a bad car when it comes to these two cars. Both of them have their faults and things that I like and dislike on them. So this is just 5 things as I see it, which I'm not particularly missing anymore now that I don't have my Atto anymore. Alright, so let's get straight into it, and we're going to start with number 1 on my list, which is the air conditioning. So the air conditioning, it's not terrible. You know, like nothing is terrible on the Atto 3. And I do like that they did move these climate control buttons here permanently on the bottom so you can easily adjust them. Got fan speed and so on, and then you can alter where the airflow is and so on to customize it. And you know, you've got the 2 zones there, so if your passenger likes it warmer or whatever. But certainly in summer, which we're just in at the moment in Australia, I can confidently say I don't miss the time it takes to cool down the car. So it does cool down the car okay, but it takes a bit longer, whereas it's almost instantaneous in the Volvo. So I'm not sure why the Atto 3 is not quite as good. Who knows, but they definitely need to work on it, and I'm sure it's something that will be addressed in future years. Get that air conditioning sorted, BYD. Can confidently say that aircon is way better. So number 2 on the Atto 3 is the central locking. Let's have a look. So there's one button on the driver's door, which you just press here to open. So on the Atto 3, for some reason, there's only one button on the driver's door for locking and unlocking the Atto. If you don't want to use the key, you can see the other doors here have no switches, which is, yeah, a bit unusual, but that's just the way it is. Now let's check out the Volvo. So with the central locking, all 4 doors, you can see there's this little indentation there. Basically, you don't even need to really press anything. You can just hold onto the door. You can see it will unlock, the mirrors will move. But when you want to lock it, just press that button there. But you see all of the doors will do it. So you can unlock it, and I can lock all 4 doors from any door on the car. So the central locking is brilliant. So moving on to number 3, and it's the 2-wheel drive system of the Atto 3. So I much prefer the all-wheel drive. Now this footage here is from episode 59, which is all about the snow mode. I'll put a link if you want to go back and have a look at that, where I delve into how you can best maximize the Atto 3 if you want to take it off-road. So I have done quite a bit of off-roading with the Atto before. It does have its limitations, obviously, because it is that front-wheel drive, as opposed to the all-wheel drive system which we've got on the Volvo. So yeah, again, it's not terrible. You can certainly go off-road with it, you know, down some gravel tracks. Neither of the 2 vehicles can you do hardcore off-roading with. We'll leave that for maybe one of the newer BYDs that's got a proper off-road system. And we've just literally come back from doing some off-roading. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I made a trip. I mentioned it in one of the last couple of episodes. And here's a little bit of footage on the screen now. I haven't done the episode yet, but I'm going to do an episode about some of the off-roading we did, and in a word, it was pretty good. And just having that all-wheel drive does make a difference, especially when you're going on some really rough tracks. So just going on gravel tracks, and we also did some hill climbing up and down a hill, so I'll show some more footage of that later on. So yeah, 4 marks to the Volvo for being just that little bit better than the Atto 3. Number 4 on my list, I did cover a little bit on my recent review of my car, and it is the cruise control. So let's have a look at the Atto first. So to operate the cruise control, firstly you can see those 3 bars, and that means it defaults always to 3 bars, which is the length you go between the cars when you sort of set the radar to cruise control. So there's a default there, so if you want to have it a bit closer, unfortunately it always defaults to that. And the second thing is you always have to press this button here. So you have to press that to turn it on, and then you have to set it. So the minimum speed is 30, and then if you flick that down, it will set. So not quite as easy to set as on the Volvo. And then of course we've got the increments, so I'll just demonstrate that. So to resume, you just flick it up and it will resume, but then if you flick it up, it will only go up increments of 5. And similarly, if you go down, it will also go down. So you can't do it up by 1. Not quite as good as on the Volvo. Now I covered the Volvo's cruise control in the very last episode, so I'm just gonna lift a little excerpt from that and you can see exactly how good it is on the Volvo. Okay, so I've come out to one of my favorite deserted roads to just show you how this cruise control works. You have to be going more than 30 k's an hour, and then all you do is you simply press this button here. That's all you do, and it sets the cruise control. Then you can use this one. It will go up in increments of 5 if you press it once, so 40, 45, and similarly if you go down, it'll go down. But what the great thing is, if you hold it in, it goes up by increments of 1 kilometer an hour, which is really great if you just want to nail a certain speed. So what I'll do is I'll set it. Now you can see it's set, and you can see right in the middle there's the car with some bars in front of it. Now you can decrease it or increase the distance. Now the good thing about this car is it will keep that distance in the car's memory. So just like the Subaru Forester that I owned before this and Subaru Outbacks that I've had, it'll store that information. So if I turn off the ignition now, so now what I'll do is I'll accelerate up to speed, put it back onto cruise control once I'm above 30, and you can see it's kept that distance programmed in. So that's a quick look at the Volvo's cruise control system, which I think is a lot better than the one on the Atto. Now let's move on to the last thing which I do not miss on the Atto 3, and that is the bingy bongy noises and the lane keeping controls. Let's have a look. I've put it onto cruise control. It doesn't matter whether you're on cruise control or not, but have a listen to the noise. So very annoying. So a horrible noise and quite a noticeable turn to the steering wheel there, which I feel is quite dangerous. I'm only going at a low speed. I daren't demonstrate that at any higher. That's because the lane keeping defaults on. To actually disable it, you have to go into the settings. So I'll show you how to disable the lane keeping. So like a lot of cars, you need to delve into the menu to disable these sorts of things. If I'm going on a long trip, I would do this beforehand. Luckily, they have put some of these shortcuts at the bottom, which does help you. So you can press the settings button there, and you just go straight into ADAS. Once you're into ADAS, the very first one at the top is your emergency lane keeping. It will ask you or warn you to turn it off, and then you turn it off, and it will tell you that it will come on next time there's an ignition event. That is how you have to turn it off. So I wouldn't say it's easy to turn off, but you know, it's not as bad as it used to be on the car before the updates, but unfortunately you do have to do that. What I'll do is I'll go back out on the highway and I'll demonstrate what happens then. So I'll set the cruise control again, and now the lane keeping is off. If there's a truck coming the opposite way, it means you can pull right off. You don't need to indicate, and then it's much safer for you to get well away from any big trucks which are coming the opposite way. So that's what I do when I'm driving on the highway. If there's a wide load, then you tend to have to go right off the road anyway, right onto the shoulder. So, but it just makes it a lot safer if you've got any doubts. So for those of you who are just city slickers and haven't been out on a highway where there's a lot of trucks and you've got no idea about driving, or maybe you do drive but you don't realize that when trucks go past they create a suction effect and can pull the car closer. We don't realize how dangerous it is to drive close to a truck, and that's why lane keeping should not default on in Australia. A lot of people do long trips and lane keeping is very, very dangerous when you're on the highway. Now you can see here there's a truck coming, or there's a big vehicle coming up ahead. If that's the case, you want to be as close as possible to the line here on the left. You do not want to be right in the middle of the lane. It's so stupid why people think that you need to have this lane keeping. You do not need it. So you can see here I go right to the left as close as possible to the line. You do not want to have this thing beeping at you and trying to correct your steering when there's a big truck like that. Some of these trains, they've now got quad road trains. That's 4 trailers they've got. Very dangerous. Well, that's my feelings on the lane keeping on the BYD, but how does it stack up on the Volvo? Let's firstly look at the reversing noises. So I do have noises on the Volvo as well when you reverse and if you get too close to something. So you can hear they're not quite as loud and doesn't sound like won the jackpot. So a little bit better than on the Atto, the noises. Okay, so now let's have a look at the lane keeping system on the Volvo and how it stacks up against the Atto. And the first thing I'll quickly point out is you can be almost on the line before it will intervene. What will happen is if you get too close to the line, there's just a slight vibration and it'll bring you back. You can see there's a little sign there. You can see when you get too close it will go orange. But it's not as violent, the jerking, and it certainly does not beep, which is good. Now if you indicate, it will disable the lane keeping. So which is what I have to do if I really want to get off the road, for example if there's a really big truck. So I'll just clarify that. So if you need to get off the road, you can indicate, but you don't have to. You can override the lane keeping just by steering also off the road in the Volvo. And now the episode is drawing to a close, so I'll just reiterate that neither car is terrible. All cars have their faults and things which are really, really good, and that's how I see it. There's those 5 things which I certainly don't miss on the Atto 3, but both cars have some great points. In fact, they're both great cars. They just fulfill a different need. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you've got an EV and there's something that you particularly like or dislike, or maybe there's something similar which you saw in the video here today and you can point that out to me. Love to hear how you're getting on with your EVs out there. But anyway, that's it for today. So thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it as always. And you guys take care out there on the roads. If you are doing a long trip and you have got lane keeping, well, you know, if you're on a highway, I do suggest you disable it. You know, it might be okay around the city, but certainly not when you're traveling those long distances. So do be careful if you are doing a long trip. Alright, we'll see you very soon with more on Down Under EV Adventures. Bye for now.